What's up, everybody? Your boy Pat back again with another edition of Second Take, where I talk tech and I speak sports. Today's topic of the day is Chris Paul is better than LeBron James.
This is a Heat Rocks production.
Now, before we get into it, make sure you like and subscribe and hit the bell, as it helps out the channel. Now, Chris Paul is better than LeBron James. Now, when I make this statement, I'm not saying Chris Paul is a better player statistically or even a better player in general. What I'm saying is Chris Paul is a better teammate and makes the teams that he gets on better than LeBron James does. Now, I know the quick knee-jerk reaction is for you to challenge me on this and tell me that I'm wrong, that wherever LeBron James goes, the team is successful, but I'm going to show you differently. And we're going to start by going through the careers of these two guys and the teams they played for and how those teams performed the year those guys got on the team and the years prior to those guys getting on the team. So let's get started. Chris Paul started his career in the 2005-2006 season for the New Orleans franchise. Prior to Paul getting on the team his first year, New Orleans was 18-64. Paul's first year, they jumped up 20 victories to 38-44. By year 3, Chris Paul had that team at 56-26. Now, I know what you're saying. The rosters probably looked a lot different. Well, let's look at roster 04-05 versus roster 05-06. As you can see, Chris Paul lost a lot more talent than he gained, and he lost a lot more scoring than he gained, and he was still able to put up impressive results. So essentially, Chris Paul was the reason why the New Orleans team was able to get plus 20 in the win column. He didn't have a different player with him like Chris Bosh or Kyrie Irving or Kevin Love like LeBron does. LeBron James arrived to the NBA in the 03-04 season with the Cleveland franchise. The record prior was 17-65. The year James arrived was 37-45. So also, like Chris Paul, a 20-game improvement. But when you compare the two rosters, they are essentially the same. One last point I like to make is Chris Paul in year 3 with the New Orleans franchise was 56-26 for number 1 in the conference. LeBron James was never able to get the Cleveland Cavaliers to a number 1 seed in the conference until year 6 of his career. So in my opinion, round 1 goes to Chris Paul. But let's continue on their two careers a little bit further. Moving on to when Chris Paul left the New Orleans franchise for the Clippers. Now, in year 1, that was a strike-shortened season, and the Clippers actually went 40-26 that year. The year prior to Paul arriving, they went 32-50. So, with 16 less games played, Paul was actually able to get that team to 8 more victories. Now, let's take a look at the roster that Chris Paul had when he arrived. When looking at the 10-11 roster, Chris Paul lost teammates like Eric Gordon, Baron Davis, and Chris Kaman. And in the 11-12 roster, he gained teammates such as Chauncey Billups, Caron Butler, Randy Foye, and Nick Young. But if you look at the points that these guys averaged, they're roughly 47 points, whether it's for the 3 guys on the 10-11 team or the 4 guys on the 11-12 team. So roughly the same team depending on which year you look at. Moving on to LeBron James when he left Cleveland to go to Miami. Now remember, in the 10-11 season, LeBron didn't only join Dwayne Wade, but he also brought with him Chris Bosh, an all-star with the Toronto Raptors. And for all the firepower that was added to Miami, LeBron was only able to lead them to an 11-point difference in terms of win total. They went from 47-35 the year prior to LeBron arriving to 58-24 the year LeBron joined Miami. Round 2 for me goes to Chris Paul. Not only was he able to get the LA Clippers 20 wins more than the year prior to him arriving with no help, LeBron James was only able to get the Miami Heat an 11-point difference in games with him bringing along Chris Bosh. When Chris Paul was traded from the Clippers to the Houston Rockets record before Paul arrived was 55-27. That team had the likes of James Harden, Eric Gordon, and Clint Capella as their big three. When Chris Paul arrived, they were able to go from 55-27 to 65-17 with basically the same core, a 10-game improvement. Moving on to LeBron James, when he actually left Miami and returned to Cleveland in the 14-15 season, the Cleveland franchise went 53-29. The prior year, they were 33-49. But keep in mind, the 20-game improvement, while being good, also came with the likes of Kevin Love, tagging along with LeBron. Round 3 for me goes to LeBron James. Despite bringing Kevin Love with him to Miami this time, he did get a 20-game improvement for the Cleveland Cavaliers, while Chris Paul was only able to get a 10-game improvement. Moving on, Houston finally traded Chris Paul to the Oklahoma City Thunder. The year prior, the Thunder had 49 victories. The year Paul arrived, they had 44 victories. A 5-win difference, not in Paul's favor. But remember, the year prior, the Oklahoma City Thunder had Russell Westbrook as well as Paul George. They traded both of them superstars and turned the keys over to Chris Paul, who they got in trade. But that team was predicted by many NBA analysts and experts to finish at the bottom of the Western Conference. They not only finished 5th in the Western Conference, but shut the naysayers up. Let's take a look at LeBron James when he got to the Lakers. The year prior to James arriving, the Lakers were 35-47. The year he got there, they went 37-45. The rosters remained relatively the same. Now, I understand the first year LeBron got there, the expectations were to bring a championship to LA. But quite the contrary happened as the Lakers struggled. LeBron did get hurt that year, but it doesn't change the narrative that when he was playing, the Lakers were still playing subpar ball and were nowhere near the championship team that they were expected to be. So I would give the nod in this case to Chris Paul. Last but not least, Chris Paul made one other move, going from the Oklahoma City Thunder to the Phoenix Suns. The year prior to Paul arriving, the Phoenix Suns went 34-49. This year, Paul's got them at 34-14, 25 games ahead of the pace for win number 34. Obviously, LeBron James is still in the Lakers. He did wind up winning a title, but guess what he did again? He wound up getting the help of Anthony Davis, possibly the best power forward in the game today. So, in conclusion, I will tell you once again, Chris Paul, when he is gone to teams, he has made them better. He has not brought help with him. He is able to elevate teammates. The rosters are relatively the same. In the case of LeBron James, he gets success sometimes, not the success that he should be getting because he's bringing a lot of help with the likes of Ray Allen and Chris Bosh and Kevin Love and most recently with Anthony Davis. But I'm still going to give the nod to Chris Paul in terms of making teams better when he arrives. Shout out to everybody rocking me on Instagram, YouTube, the Anchor app. You can also find me on Spotify as well as Apple and Google Podcasts. It's your boy Pat. Peace. Catch you in the next one.